and teach other people how to have peace of mind in all the difficulties which you have in your life. And one of the first things which I'm going to talk about is how to have peace of mind when someone close to you dies. I've just come back from San Francisco, arrived back in Australia last Friday, only a couple of days ago. And one of the people I saw there over in San Francisco, she was this young woman, a Colombian woman living in the United States, maybe in her late 20s, early 30s. And she had this great relationship with this guy. You know, he would do anything for her, and really, really close. And he was having dinner one evening, and he looked at her, smiled, and dropped dead. No warning at all. No sort of any sign. He was only about 27 or 28, this guy. And the love of her life suddenly disappeared and vanished. And the reason she came to see me was because she said, at first when it happened, there was shock. Disbelief that something like that could happen. Just right in front of her, he smiled and he was no longer. And it was actually only the talks they got from me which actually helped her. I think it was her who said that she was really a bit lost, not knowing what to do with her life and just how to deal with a sudden tragedy like that. And she was listening to National Public Radio in the United States. And there, this interviewing this writer of Saturday Night Live. You know Saturday Night Live? It's the most famous comedy show in the United States. And they were interviewing one of the writers. And this writer was saying how he got really depressed and upset, and what saved his life was listening to these talks of this Australian monk. Me! And when she heard that, she started listening and got through it, and she came up to me to say thank you. But it made me understand that where they get all these jokes from Saturday Night Live. They listen to me. That's where the jokes come from. And so now, joke number one. Come out, because you always come in and say some new jokes. These are new jokes, should be new jokes, unless you've heard these on YouTube or on Saturday Night Live. And if they did say them on Saturday Night Live, you know where they got them from. And now, do you have to pay house insurance in Hong Kong? You know, to stop burglars and other people coming into your house? And the bigger your house, the more expensive it is. There's this guy in Australia, he found a very, very easy way not to pay insurance. In fact, he cancelled all his insurance premiums. He took out all his expensive security alarms from his windows and doors. He even didn't lock the doors at night. All he did was put up a big flagpole, and on the top of the flagpole, he put this flag of the Islamic State in Iraq, in Syria. Now he has 24/7 surveillance, free, from the CIA, the FBI, and the federal police. So that's a good way of not having to pay insurance. Let someone else do it for free because they think you're into trouble. But anyway, how this happened, how we actually can overcome a sudden death like that. And story, powerful story, related to my own life. My own father died when I was only 16 years of age. Very young age to lose your dad, especially if you love him very much. And he was like a mentor for me. He was someone a 16-year-old looked up to get you through those ages of teenage years. And he died. And the strange thing was that I never cried at his funeral. And I've never cried since, even though I love that man to bits. And it was really strange for me to understand how I felt. And it was only later on, when I was a monk, a bit more mature, I had the opportunity to reflect on how I felt. To get to know a male's emotional world. And when I was meditating in Thailand, years later, I understood exactly how I felt, because it was so similar to another emotion which I could recognize in my youth. As you know, I grew up in London in the 60s and 70s. It was a great place to grow up if you love music. When I was only 11 years of age, I sneaked in to watch the Rolling Stones perform. I remember just going to see this one band who were playing with my brother. Only 6 people turned up to watch this band. you'd be lucky to get a ticket for 10,000 people because the lead singer later became famous. He's called Rod Stewart. And only 6 of us watched him in those early days. And I had so many wonderful memories. I don't know if any of you like rock music. We know Led Zeppelin. I was there at their very first concert in the Marquee Club in Soho, Wardour Street. I used to love music. It wasn't just rock music. It was classical music, folk music, jazz music. I liked everything. And as a young man who loves music, growing up in London, it was incredible. All the greatest bands came there. And actually, many of the bands started off in London. And I was there to watch them all. It was brilliant. I do remember in all those clubs, auditoriums, and concert halls, Albert Hall, whenever the concert was ended, I would get up with everybody else. We'd clap and shout for more. It's called the encore. It still happens these days. And the band or orchestra, the performer, carries on for maybe 5 or 10, 15 minutes if you're lucky. And then they have to finish. And then everyone has to go home. And I remember clearly walking out of those clubs, concert halls or pubs in London, knowing that the chances of listening to such great music again by such performers was nil. I would never hear that again. The concert had finished. But when I walked out into those London nights, which were always cold, I always remember it as raining. Not just real rain, it's just that half rain they call drizzle. It's the most depressing climate in the whole world, I reckon. If it rains, let it rain. If it's sunny, let it be sunny. If it snows, let it snow. Not this half-hearted sort of rain called drizzle. Even the name makes you depressed when drizzle. But even though I went out in the cold, dark, gloomy, wet London night, knowing that the concert had finished, never once did I feel sad. Never once did I cry, thinking the concert was over. After these great performances, I never felt sad. I felt gratitude. I felt I was blessed. How lucky I was to listen to some of these great performers and Rod Stewart personal concert. I remember once a whole night and 2 hours of, those of you my age who like more music, 2 hours of the Doors, followed by 2 hours of Jefferson Airplane, later Jefferson Starship, another 2 hours of Doors, another 2 hours of Jefferson Starship. Some of the greatest bands of the 60s and 70s I was there to listen to. I felt so lucky to have been there for the time. I never felt sad. And I realized that that was exactly how I felt when my father died. I felt 16 years, it's not long enough. And it was very similar because many times, his illness was progressive. Many times we thought he died. He gave us an encore several times. But eventually when he did die, I thought, thank you. What a wonderful concert that was. And how lucky I was to have been your son. And to have witnessed those 16 years. I'll never forget those. Thank you so much. I felt like you feel after a great concert. Not sadness, but a sense of being privileged to have been there at the time. And of course, just like those concerts, I've been a monk over 40 years now, and I still remember those great concerts and the music. I always remember my father's 16 years, but never ever with sadness, always with gratitude. Thank you so much for being there. And you can see just how that changes things which we call grief into peace of mind, and even more than peace of mind, this wonderful sense of being grateful for what we've had together. Now that's how we can change what many people in this world take as sorrow and grief, which will cripple a person emotionally and sometimes physically, sometimes when a loved one dies. what do? Sometimes you can't stop them. You can't sort of magic them back to life again. And we suffer immensely. It doesn't help them, it doesn't help us, it doesn't help anybody. There is other ways of getting peace of mind where other people have tragedy. We also have many times, because this is my job as a monk, trying to take these funeral services for others. Like this young man who died on his mid-20s, just right in front of his wife, and they were still the closest of lovers. The question would always come up, why? Why do young people die? And part of my job is not just for people in their 20s, sometimes children. Now you have a young family and a child dies only 3, 4, 5 years of age. Sometimes that's one of the hardest events for a person to handle. That's my job, to teach them how to handle that. Another attitude to bring peace of mind to a family. And how will I teach them? Another story. Because truth is conveyed in stories, far better than theory. You tell a person what to do, they don't remember. A story, it fleshes it out, it gives you something you can repeat to others, and most importantly, repeat to yourself. You can remember stories, not facts. But the story was about a monk. And I was told this many years ago, 40 years ago, I went to Thailand to become a monk. Spent 9 years there. And some of these places were jungles, with real tigers. And first of all, I was afraid of tigers. But the villagers and other monks said, don't be afraid. No, tigers don't eat monks. They said, how do you know if they ate a monk, he wouldn't be alive to tell you that they did? I never trusted that. But nevertheless, once I came face to face with a tiger. Honestly, true. The tiger was only about 3 feet in front of me. We stared at each other. A really big, and these tigers, they're huge and incredibly powerful. You take one look at these tigers, and most people will be afraid. I wasn't afraid. Honestly, I wasn't afraid, because I saw the tiger in a zoo. The bar in front of us. I like tigers. But anyway, this was told to me by an old monk who lived in the north of Thailand, in the jungles. And in those days, even sometimes these days, monks are supposed to live very simple lives. We're monks, okay, not royalty. So please, all the Thai people here, please do not treat monks as royalty. Otherwise you spoil them. Yeah, respect them, but don't so overdo it. So in this particular case, this monk, he was living in a very simple hut, just made of bamboo and grass thatch. Very simple to build, but very comfortable, especially in the hot weather. But it's not that good when there's a storm, because there's no protection there. So there's this huge storm in the jungle one night, and the monk was meditating there, no way he could go to sleep, hearing all these heavy branches and trees come crashing down to the ground. Now please excuse me for mentioning just the word crashing very loud. But I always remember, I was taught, and it's true, that after lunch, you should never give talks because people can't sleep. So I have to wake you up every now and again by trying to scare the hell out of you to wake you up. So crash, you came down to the ground. And now he was scared. Because even if a heavy branch, let alone a tree, if that landed on the roof of his hut, it was only bamboo and thatch, it goes straight through. And even if it didn't kill him instantly, he'd be so injured. There was no mobile phones to call an ambulance. It was in the middle of the jungle. You wouldn't even be able to crawl out. You just have to stay there and just die slowly. So it was really, really dangerous. So he was up all night meditating. Many times many trees and branches come crashing down, but it just missed his roof. And I don't know why this is. Somebody may tell me, but the storms tend to always stop about dawn. I don't know why, but everything gets peaceful and calm at that time. The storm's over. At least that's what happened to him. And he went out of his little hut at the first light of day to look at the damage. And he was very lucky. Many trees had only just missed him. But then something struck him, which he never expected. It wasn't a tree, it was insight. Because he looked at the leaves which had been torn off the trees the night before, which lay scattered on the forest floor. As you would expect, most of the leaves on the forest floor were the old brown leaves, which had lived a full life on the twigs and branches, and now lay dead on the ground. Amongst those brown leaves were many yellow leaves as well, even many green leaves, also dead on the floor. But what he didn't realize, what surprised him, was amongst those green leaves there were some leaves which were so freshly green, he knew those must have been from shoots, maybe only come out of the branches the night before or the day before. Even these very, very young leaves had been torn off the branches and were dead on the forest floor. And he looked up onto the branches to see what was left. And again, as one would expect, it's mostly the green leaves. And even though some freshly born green leaves had been torn off and were dead on the ground, still on the branches and twigs were these curly old brown leaves. They were still alive on the tree, while young ones had been ripped off and lay dead. And he thought, is this anything wrong? That the storms of life take sometimes the young ones and leave the old ones still clinging on to the trees of life? No, there's nothing wrong. This is nature. This is our life. And we have to accept nature instead of fighting it. Once we accept nature, we accept the simile of the leaves torn off the tree by the storm, the leaves left, we understand why it is that sometimes young people pass away. And old ones, 80, 90, keep clinging on year after year, never dying. With understanding comes acceptance. With acceptance comes peace of mind. You can't blame the wind. You can't blame the trees. This is nature. This is life. When we understand this, it's not such a problem anymore. Of course, it does become a little easier if the parents understand things like reincarnation. It means they have another try afterwards. Because I think I said last time, if you don't believe in reincarnation, it doesn't matter.